The trim tilt on my Evinrude engine stopped working correctly. The problem was some leaking hydraulics. Specifically, I was seeing hydraulic fluid leak between this end cap and the piston shaft here. The seals needed to be replaced on the end cap. Step one of this process was to remove the end caps. I've already done that on this side. And on this other side, you can see I still have the end cap installed, although it is loosened. To loosen these up, unfortunately, I had to break them. The tool that is commonly used for this is a spanner wrench, and the spanner wrench I used sheared off a pin. Typically these can be inserted into the holes on the end cap, and the end cap can be rotated. Although this engine was sitting under salt water for many years with the prior owner, this end cap was completely seized to the engine. In order to break it free, and it took a lot of effort, I used a screwdriver and hit it. I had to give it a few hits over a period of a few days, also heating up the area with a blowtorch, soaking it with penetrating oil. Eventually, after a few days and a total of maybe an hour of effort on each side, the end cap finally broke loose. I unfortunately destroyed the end cap in the process, and I will have to purchase used end caps on eBay to replace the old. My intent here is to replace all the seals, put in new fluid, and get the engine functioning again. Follow me along if you'd like. The trim tilt rams contain some serious pitting. This pitting will only cause premature failure of any new seals I put on, so I'm going to try to get rid of this. In order to get rid of it, I'm going to put this into a lathe and polish it up again. I might end up taking some of the diameter down, although I think the new seals will take up this change in dimension. The rams are now much smoother than they were. I didn't remove enough material to take out all of the scratches entirely, although I don't feel any sharp edges. I imagine this will not be a problematic and cause my new seals to fail. If it does cause my new seals to fail, of course I can always come back and really cut down some material and completely remove these scratches. This should be good enough though. Moving on now, I need to rebuild these parts with new seals. A kit can be purchased with a whole lot of seals for more than the parts that are seen here. This includes even the seals for the electric pump. Each of these parts contains 2 seals. These were purchased from eBay used, so you can see they do have some wear on the holes, although they'll still be functional. I've not yet removed the seals from this part. I'll go ahead and do so. Seal 1, and there's a second one deeper into this hole. Those are replaced with 1 and 2. The original seals were removed from this end cap. It's now time to put in the new seals in this inner diameter. I'll begin with seal number 1. Orientation of this matters. I'll install as you see here, as opposed to this orientation. Very nice. And this similarly installs a little bit deeper into the inner diameter. 2 seals complete on the inner diameter. I forgot earlier about this 3rd seal on the end cap. This is on the outer diameter. I'll remove this and pop on the new one. End cap complete. The new seals assemble in the reverse order. Again, easily. Number 1. Number 2. And finally, number 3. New seals on the piston. Fitting the piston to the end cap. I do have a seemingly tight seal. I think this will work quite well. With the engine in its upright position using the lock here, I reassembled everything. This includes the rams and the end caps. I used a spanner wrench to tighten down the end caps. You'll definitely want to use some good quality marine grease and lubricate these rams. This will prevent the rams from damaging the new seals. I even went ahead and also lubricated the tilt, which I have not replaced any seals here. The next step is to fill with trim tilt fluid and bleed the system. I filled and bled the trim tilt on the engine. It now moves up and down quite well. You'll find online a number of different ways to do the bleeding of the system. It does take some time. What I did is I had to help the engine up into its upright position and put down the lock to keep it in that position. I used the lock here in order to help the engine upright because it wasn't moving at all. I had to loosen up the trim tilt lock. On my engine, it's a screw in this hole. You have to be careful not to strip it, but that relieves the pressure from the hydraulics and allows you to lift up the engine under your own strength. That is not an easy task as the engine is quite heavy. In order for me to do this on my own, I used some straps here. The straps are attached to the sides of my trailer, and I put it around the engine, the strap, and then made sure I had a good attachment to the trailer, and tightened up on the ratchet in order to bring the engine up about 20 degrees. From there I was more easily able to manually lift it up until I could lock down my brake here. With the brake activated, I removed this cap. This is the reservoir for the trim tilt fluid, and filled up this reservoir. I filled up using this container. I'm easily able to insert this portion of the container into the reservoir and fill up with fluid until overflowing. Now, it's important to fill up the reservoir while the boat trailer is level. Once filled up, I put the cap back on and then manually allowed the engine to go downward, brought it back upward, and filled up with some more fluid. Now, what I read online is that some people recommend keeping the reservoir cap off when moving the engine up and down. Also, some people recommend the trim tilt lock that's on the other side of the engine, that screw you saw earlier, being tightened or loosened. This varied from person to person. What I did is, when I was exercising the engine up and down, I kept the reservoir cap on and I tightened clockwise the lock mechanism for the trim tilt. That is the screw on the other side. I tightened it up. Now, this worked for me. Another trick I found that worked quite well is when the engine was upward and I was filling the reservoir, I pressed on the trim tilt button upward as I was filling the reservoir. This kept the pump running and suction of the trim tilt fluid into the cylinders as much as I possibly could. Doing this, I only had to fill up the reservoir maybe 3 or 4 times before I filled it up sufficiently so that it was not taking on any additional fluid. Now we're functioning, ready to do some fishing this weekend. I hope this helps you with your project.